Well, hello and welcome. On behalf of the Travel Club of Alumni UBC, I would like to welcome you to the third of our three-part Fall 2022 webinar series. Thank you, first off, for moving over to Zoom today so we can enjoy the visuals of this presentation. My name is L'Oreal Penny, Director at Worldwide Quest. We are the exclusive travel partner for the Alumni UBC Travel Club. I work with Karen Kennigan, the Alumni Services Manager, to design the Travel Club tours and experiences. The Travel Club webinars and all our activities are open to all alumni, friends, and curious travelers interested in continuing their passion for learning. So please do spread the word. Everyone is welcome to register for the webinars and to join us on tour. If you don't know about us yet, you can find out more on alumni.ubc.ca under the Learn and Explore tab. What makes the Travel Club so special? We connect with expert UBC study leaders like today's speaker, go deeper with meaningful local experiences, get inspired by thoughtful itineraries, and access the best value in educational travel. Our webinars, tours, and activities explore a variety of themes: arts and culture, active and wellness, nature and wildlife, food and wine. And in fact, today's webinar cuts across all of these themes. We travel around the world from Antarctica to Tanzania to today's destination, Tofino. And while this may be a destination that feels close to you geographically, I think today's presenter will introduce it to you in a whole new way. If you have any questions during the webinar, please share them in the chat box, and I'll put these to our speaker at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and sent to you after the presentation so you can share it with friends or enjoy it again. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Heather Pelletier is the founder and lead facilitator of Nature's Boardroom. Heather's storytelling style uses the natural world as a lens to help people navigate their way in the modern world. Sustainability, well-being, and connection are woven into her innovative approach, but the true value of her work lies in helping people get in touch with their purpose to see a clearer path towards meaningful change. And today she'll tell us more about that. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you, L'Oreal. Appreciate that introduction. Hello, everyone. So before we begin, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today on the unceded ancestral lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm personally grateful to call this land my home. I have ancestral roots that go back up to 4 generations. I grew up here, went to university, worked here, and launched my business from this land. And I recognize that I'm only part of my way on a journey towards decolonization and reconciliation. So before I explain what you'll be learning today and the objective of the webinar, I want you to watch a video that I'm about to share. And just take a moment to get centered. I'm just going to share it with you now and listen along as I share, and then I'm going to explain a little bit more about what this webinar is about right afterwards. Just a moment here. Allow yourself to be transported into the forest. Take a deep breath of air filled with oxygen. Remember, this life-giving element is made by trees. As you exhale, your breath is now mostly carbon dioxide, which is a life-giving element needed by trees. It's a breathing cycle that makes life possible on our planet. Trees breathe life into you, and you breathe life into them. Once your breath is calm, focus on what you can see in the video. You might notice the shades of green and textures on the bark and the leaves. Watch as the sunlight glistens through the trees. Now, imagine the roots of the plants and the nutrition in the soil. What if I told you that trees are able to communicate, share resources, and even share information, and do so using a long strands of fungal threads in the soil? So take a moment to let that sink in. Underneath the forest floor is an information superhighway, very similar to the internet. It's a complex web of signals constantly being passed back and forth, much like fiber optic cables carrying huge amounts of data. Or you could think of these fungal threads as blood vessels and the trees as lungs. These hidden fungi in the soil have also been compared to the neurons in our brains. Okay. Good. So I hope that you feel centered and that I've aroused your curiosity. What I'm doing here is introducing you to learning content that I'm focusing on in this webinar, but also letting your mind get into an optimal state. So you're not just learning, but you're primed to ideate, solve problems, and ultimately find a deeper connection to your values, leading you to meaningful, actionable change. So today, I'm providing you a short sample of the experiential learning we have planned for the UBC Travel Club tour package that was recently announced. It's titled Tofino, an immersive learning experience in nature, and registration is available for dates this spring. So I'm one of the tour leaders, but as L'Oreal mentioned earlier, I'm also the founder of Nature's Boardroom. We offer workshops that are a newer, better alternative to traditional personal and professional development seminars. It's a holistic experience that uses forest ecology as an analogy for finding more productivity and resilience in both your own lives and your own ecosystems. These ecosystems are the communities you're involved in, be it work, home, or other facets of your life. Our workshops also always incorporate wellness through the healing benefits of nature. There's a huge body of research proving the benefits that time in nature has on our physical and mental health. But one study also shows that even looking at a picture of nature has healing benefits. So today you'll get a little microdose of nature through more videos and more visualization exercises. So since this webinar is really just a short sample of what you can experience with me in Tofino this spring, we won't be moving into the interactive components that we normally would include. These are guided discussion questions and group facilitation. Tofino, they're going to look like fireside chats in a forest cabin. So a great alternative is for you to simply find some space around you right now and allow you to move your body while you listen. If you're at home, pick up your laptop, take it to your living room and sprawl out on your carpet. Or if you're in your office, move your chair, stand up, find your center, breathe deep while you stretch your arms. So many of my workshops are actually in the forest, walking with teammates as you listen, but that's not always possible. So this is going to be a great alternative. So as I share the next video, settle in and do what you need to do to take care of your body. Just a moment here. Okay. Here we are walking along a trail in the temperate rainforest of Vancouver Island, close to where our Tofino spring retreat will be. So remember earlier when I mentioned that trees can essentially talk to each other and work together as a community? This is the story about how that was proven through modern Western scientific research. So I mentioned modern Western science because Indigenous ancestral knowledge shows us that this deep understanding of the complex systems in the forest existed for thousands of years. So let's go back to 1997. A young forestry major from the University of British Columbia named Suzanne Simard has a summer job to supervise tree planting in a patch of forest near her hometown in the interior of BC. She felt incredibly disheartened to see these young trees repeatedly dying and suspected it might have something to do with the soil, but she was a young woman in a male-dominated industry, and the theory at the time was that trees compete for light. The common practice was to replant trees of the same species in perfect rows to try and maximize growth. But Suzanne knew that trees were not constantly battling each other for survival, but preferred to live in diverse, supportive communities. So she set out to prove her theory. Suzanne went back to get her PhD and designed what would turn out to be one of the most important discoveries in forest ecology to date. Suzanne's experiments proved that carbon was being exchanged among various trees in a specific forest. And this led to the discovery of a massive, complex communication system of fungal threads in the soil. So yes, you're hearing me right, fungal as in mushrooms. So all mushrooms have thin roots that can stretch for up to 1 kilometer or more and can graft onto the roots of nearly all types of plants. This symbiotic biological system is called mycorrhiza, and the fungal threads are called mycelium. This is the network that I compared earlier to fiber optic cables. In fact, the discovery has jokingly been referred to as the Wood Wide Web. It's a network that Suzanne Simard and other respected scientists also describe as a neural network that's analogous to a giant brain in the soil. So we're soon approaching a beautiful lookout onto a waterfall on our virtual walk through the temperate rainforest. As we approach, we're going to basically stop on the path and take a moment to let the forest share its secrets. So this is a forest dominated by maple and cedar. These two species are dependent on each other. You can see a maple here on the right swaying in the breeze, and not pictured are the many nearby cedar trees that we saw walking to this viewpoint. In the summer, maple trees have huge green leaves that photosynthesize large amounts of sunlight into carbon, which simply put is energy. So these maples don't hoard carbon for themselves. They strategically share it with nearby cedars. So why do cedars need this energy boost? Well, they're more shaded in the summer because of the leaves of the maples. But in the winter, cedars are still able to photosynthesize because they don't have leaves to shed. They're evergreens. So in return, those cedars share their carbon with the maples to help it get through the winter. And really, this is a very simplified explanation of what is happening right in front of us. But it's a great example of how trees cooperate to ensure that not just one tree shines bright in the sun, but that even when the tallest trees throw shade, they make up for it by giving back to the network. So before we ponder this idyllic image a bit longer, I do want to remind you that the research I'm referencing is from Western science, but Suzanne Simard and her team from UBC also recognize that Indigenous cultures have long known how trees communicate and share resources. In fact, on Suzanne's team is Dr. Teresa Ryan. She explains that research on mycorrhizal networks and the forest practices that follow it mirror Aboriginal insights and traditions. And here's a quote from Dr. Teresa Ryan's TED Talk. Sustainability means thinking in terms of whole systems with all their interconnections, consequences, and feedback loops. So there's much more to say about Indigenous ancestral knowledge, and I encourage you to learn more directly from those who are sharing their stories. For me, it's an important part of my personal commitment to decolonization and reconciliation. But I'm personally inspired by the Indigenous way of knowing. It's about having a deep understanding of the processes that must be in place for a system to be in balance. It leads to values rooted in taking care of each other. The pinnacle of success being how much you give away, not how much you keep for yourself. So today I challenge you to consider what you've learned about how the forest cooperates. Bear with me for a moment as you use the scene in front of you as a way to visualize your own life and your own ecosystems that you are a part of. The first step is to think of your role in the ecosystem as a sum of its parts working all together in balance. So we can refer to this approach as systems thinking or like a holistic viewpoint. So try it with me. Look at the maple in the foreground on the right. Imagine how it's connected to other maples, how it works in tandem with nearby cedars, but it's also connected to nearby ferns. It's next to a fresh water source, so it probably has a primary responsibility of distributing water to trees in the area whose roots don't reach. So let's now take a moment and consider what roles you play in your ecosystems. Think of yourself as the maple. Who are your fir trees? Who do you rely on and who relies on you? What systems and processes do you both use? So this is a great exercise to do as a way to step back and think of yourself as part of an ecosystem that's sustainable, productive, and resilient. How do you fit into your ecosystem, and what relationships and processes help you and your community thrive? So if this was a full-length workshop, we would dive into group discussion, and then we would work with our expert facilitators to find clarity and then small actionable steps towards your own version of meaningful change. But for today, I'm going to dive into another story about mother trees and what they can teach us about heart-centered leadership. And for that, I'm going to share a new video with you. Oh, just one moment here. Okay. So if you were moving and stretching and finding some wellness in your body while you're virtually forest bathing, you're welcome to leave in your stretching position and find a notepad to simply jot down a few components of the story that you just heard and the visualization that we did to reflect on what resonated with you the most. I'm just going to pause the video. We're going to watch now to let you quickly do that. So feel free to grab a notepad, pull up the notes section on your computer, and I want you to just jot down a few components of the story you just heard and the visualization we did to reflect. And write down what resonated the most with you. Okay. We will head into our next story here. Just give everyone another moment to pause, move, take care of yourself. I'll do the same. Okay. So here's a story about mother trees and leadership. So here we are, still on Vancouver Island, but among the ancient cedars. Let's just take in how big that tree is on the right. It contains thousands of years of wisdom. These large old trees are often the hubs of the underground network found in the forest floor. They're termed mother trees. In fact, some are great-grandmother trees, but that's really beside the point. So while you watch these short clips of the temperate rainforest, I want to take you on a journey to becoming a mother tree and then discuss the important role that mother trees play in the forest community. While I share this story, allow yourself to jot down more notes that you can reference later. The goal is to bring you new perspectives about your own journey to becoming your version of a mother tree. In other words, Stay focused on the parts of the story that resonate with you as it relates to your own leadership styles and aspirations. So the forest you see pictured here is a healthy, thriving, resilient ecosystem. And many trees will grow tall and strong, but to become a mother tree, first they must rely on the systems and inherent wisdom in the community to weather storms and build up immunity to pests. See, you can't become a mother tree until you demonstrate a strong well-being of your own. It's not about being the tallest or having the best access to resources. It's about being the healthiest. Along the way, some trees will face a major stressor. For example, this stress could be disease. A healthy tree will send out distress signals, trusting that its community will be there to respond. And it'll support that tree with information about what defenses to use. The tree contains the infection, and what's left is a big visible scar. But do you know what is the most important part of the story? The scar is called a burl, and burls are the most valuable part of a tree. The patterns in the grains of wood are beautiful and interesting, and there's inherent value in that. So I love this analogy because in the field of human behavioral science, we know that well-being is about building resilience and relying on systems and community to provide support. I'll just keep playing this video for you as I finish the story. We also know that great leaders must be well themselves, because leadership isn't about being the best. It's about supporting others to be their best. So this brings me to the next step on your journey to becoming mother trees. You can't become a mother tree by hoarding resources or acting on other trees' vulnerabilities. A mother tree's primary purpose is to give back to her network. This is the driving force behind the systems and processes in forest ecology. It's all about what you can give and not what you take. But you can't give unless you yourself are well and have proven that you can weather a storm. So take a moment and consider what your primary driving force is. It's human nature to want to have something to contribute to human society, but we often get so out of touch and caught up in our growth, our own growth, that we don't maintain a clear picture of what our version of success is. So take a moment and write down what your version of success is. I'll just give you a moment here. So we're writing down your version of success. So once you have that, consider what you need to get there. Think about how you're building up your own well-being and how you're drawing on your network to build that wellness within you. Then as you reach for your own version of success, think back to a tree's version of success. It's about well-established, long-lasting relationships built on mutual reciprocity. It's about sharing knowledge and resources with others when they need it. It's about allowing everyone access to their own light and intentionally choosing to share it with others. It's about relying on the power of the systems and processes shared within your biosphere. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So I'll give you a few minutes, or just take a moment to kind of breathe and jot down a few things that really resonated with you about that story. And reflect on what we learned today. To summarize, we discussed how the forest is a community built on mutual reciprocity with strategic relationships. So think about who is your own cedar, and do you have a mutual give and take? And how does that fit into the larger system? And then consider your own version of success, with that being kind of the driving force, right? And we learned about the driving force of the forest, and that being aiming towards being a mother tree. And a mother tree is someone who's able to always be well themselves, but giving back and giving back to the community. You can't be a mother tree unless you are sharing information, sharing knowledge, and actively contributing and using those systems and processes within your community. So that's it for my content sharing part of this webinar. And I'll let L'Oreal jump in and field some questions, and we can move on from there.
Super. Thank you so much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Just a reminder that Heather is the leader of our immersive learning experience in Tofino at the end of March of next year. Purpose-driven travel has become more important than ever, especially following the pandemic, as travelers and all of us look for enriching learning experiences and personal growth. This tour's main focus is nature and what we can learn from natural systems in relation to meaningful change. I think it will also appeal to travelers with interest in food and wine, arts and culture, and overall wellness, as these are all connected through nature. Before I go to some of the questions that have appeared in the chat, I wonder if Heather, you could just tell us a little bit more about what a typical day in Tofino would look like, and what participants could expect to gain from this experience.
Absolutely. So we'll be staying at the Pacific Sands Resort. And it's a beautiful resort on the ocean, looking out onto those crashing waves. And it's a place with forest trails right from the resort. So each day we'll be gathering in one of the large private homes on the resort. It's basically like one of the guest rooms that sleep 16 people, but we'll be using it as our meeting space, as our place for gathering for meals, and then also for all of our group facilitation and fireside chats and things. So each morning we'll go out and go for short, very leisurely walks in the forest right outside the door of our meeting space. And I'll be sharing content very similar to what you experienced here. But we'll just be diving even further into additional topics. Your mind's probably just filled with ideas on how to use some of this information to apply to your own lives and your own workplaces. And depending on weather, we'll stay out for a little bit longer, or head back in. And then I'm working with my colleague Heather White, who's an incredible executive life coach, and she'll be facilitating group discussion, small group discussion. We'll have some kind of guided discussion questions to help people really use the material to apply to their own lives. And then we'll do some further group discussion to really help create a clear picture of where you want to be and how you're going to get there, and what meaningful change looks like for you. But then we'll also be doing additional activities that help you be inspired by nature. So we'll actually be going on a foraging adventure with Canada's top chef from 2019. He was awarded the prize, Paul Moran. And he's from Tofino and will be taking us on an incredible foraging experience, and then actually using a lot of that food to serve an absolutely incredible once-in-a-lifetime culinary experience showcasing Canadian wild food. So really kind of getting meta again about how we're inspired by the nature around us and how that fosters creativity and new thought and connection with others. We'll also be visiting an Indigenous artist and talking about how they are inspired by the nature around them and what they're communicating through their art. So that was a long-winded explanation, but does that help?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Now, I wanted to ask, you've referenced Suzanne Simard's work, and I wonder what it was that first drew you or inspired you to delve deeper into her work.
She released a memoir last year, so peak of the pandemic, called Finding the Mother Tree. And I highly recommend the book to everyone. And her work started becoming part of people's consciousness. She was featured in the Netflix documentary Fantastic Fungi. For a lot of you might know her through that. She was quoted on Ted Lasso, which was amazing. I know. Excuse me. And I'm a naturalist, and I known about her work for years, but I was fascinated by it, but hadn't really let it get to the point where it is now. And I felt like a connection to how people had really started accepting her research during the pandemic. She actually published her first study like almost 25 years ago.
Right.
And it's taken a really long time for the science community to accept her discoveries. And then now she's very much embraced this idea of science communication. So bringing her science to everybody and outside of into the mainstream. And I really felt like she was very much open to people treating her work almost as poetry, and finding more deeper meaning from it. And I just wanted to help kind of finish off that process, and help people really specifically take some of those learnings and delve into how they can use that as their own forest therapy, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I think science communication has now become so important. And certainly as a lay person, I really appreciate the efforts that so many of our researchers are doing to help the lay person understand a little bit more. Jane was mentioning that she's read Dr. Simard's book and noted that her work has not changed forestry practice. Has there been any progress, do you know, Heather, in that area?
Well, she heads up the Mother Tree Project at the University of British Columbia. And I know they are making some great strides towards consulting with the forestry industry about what can be done to preserve our temperate rainforests, these ancient cedars that we saw today. And I know a lot of the solutions are based on preserving those mother trees and preserving the underground network. And so they suggest a forestry practice that's a lighter touch.
Yeah.
And I go, I'm not a expert in the forestry industry necessarily, but I like to use it as, I always using these processes as analogies and ways to learn from things. And it's a great, what we're doing to many of the forests is a great example of of a world that's not sustainable and not treating it with the balance and dignity that it deserves.
Yeah, there are certainly very interesting analogies. The work that you've done in tying Suzanne Simard's work into the personal, I think, is absolutely fascinating,
Thank you.
so very relatable too. I had the pleasure of joining Heather on a sort of an informal walkthrough of a presentation, and I have to say it made a huge impact on me in terms of, I think, what you called sort of systems thinking. But for me, it was really about making those what seemed to be very natural connections and maybe prioritizing that, and by recognizing it, being able to act on it. So I have to say, I really enjoyed our preliminary talk on that.
Good. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that.
And I'm sure anyone who joins us in Tofino next March will as well. I did want to remind everyone that you can download the tour details from the website. And to book your spot, please do give us a call at Worldwide Quest. And a reminder that you can view all of the 2023 trips on that website at alumni.ubc.ca/travel. And this is where you can also make sure to sign up for our quarterly newsletters with advance notice of upcoming trips and webinars and other events. So please sign up there and make sure your friends are signed up too. Now, on behalf of the Travel Club of Alumni UBC, thank you so much for joining us today. Wishing you all the very best of the season and happy holidays, and looking forward to seeing you in our next webinar series in the new year. Thank you so much for joining us today. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.